Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I am going to be making a tier list for all of the different weapons in the Finals Season 3. So we got a couple new weapons with Season 3, and some old ones have been kind of changed as well. And the game's kind of been out for long enough now that I feel like I'd be pretty confident in being able to make a tier list with them. So I don't think I'm going to do this in any particular order. I don't think these are arranged in any particular order. So I'm just going to start off with this 9-3R here. And instead of having S, A, B, C, D, and E, they're kind of listed differently. So there's God tier, good in all situation, decent gun, depends on playstyle, probably troll, and then trash. I am going to put the 9-3R in probably troll. I don't think this is going to depend on your playstyle. I think this is just a pretty poor weapon. And there are other weapons, such as the M11 and the XP54, which is here, that are just going to be better. I put XP54 good in all situation because it is. Even if someone's at like a pretty long range, you can make this thing worthwhile. And the M11 is good, it's solid, but at those longer ranges, you're gonna struggle a lot more with that visual recoil. But at the closer ranges, you don't need to ADS at all. The spread on this gun is very, very good. So XP54 all around, very, very solid gun. Good mag size, good reload speed, easy recoil pattern, not much visual recoil, and it hits good. It's just a very, very solid pick. Then M11 is going to be more of a close range weapon. Its visual recoil, its recoil pattern is very, very shaky at the medium to longer ranges, but you can also just not ADS because the spread is very, very tight on the weapon or the bloom. So at the closer ranges, you don't have to ADS, so it is going to deal quite a lot of damage in there. So yeah, and then there's also the V9S actually, which I suppose I would have to find as well. And I think this is going to be like pretty much in the same spot as the 9-3R. They're pretty similar weapons. I'm just going to put the V9S ahead of it though. So whatever is on the left I think is going to be slightly better than whatever is on the right. So I'm going to put the V9S ahead of the 9-3R, and that's just because I think it is a little tiny bit better. But the XP54 and the M11 are just going to be better for the most part. Like 9-3R also mag size on it is a huge, huge poor thing about it. It just doesn't have enough mag size most of the time. It seems like I've gone for light weapons here, so I suppose I'll continue with that. I'll just have to fish them out from down here first. Yeah, where's the LH1? We can go with that next. The LH1 is here. Good in all situation, decent gun. I don't think it's going to be good in all situations. I think you're going to struggle a little bit more at the closer ranges, because even though you can just not ADS, I think you are going to struggle a little bit more. Like if someone's got the SH1900, I think you're going to lose that fight at the close range. But if you've got the XP54 and someone's using an SH1900, I think you might be able to battle that out. So I think this is a good gun. I think it's very solid, but I don't think it's going to be fantastic in all situations, and so that's why I'm not putting it in the good in all situations tier. And then we're going to come to the SH1900, which is what I just mentioned, which is right here. It's not good in all situations, but it's definitely very good. It's a shotgun, right? So you gotta get up close and personal. And also, you have to be able to hit your shots with them. But if you can do both of those things, then it's going to be like up here. If you can hit like every single shot perfectly with this weapon, it's going to be God tier. But it's not good in all situations because it's a shotgun, its range is very limited, and it's not a very easy weapon to use. You have to be pretty precise with your aim to be able to use this consistently. So that's why it's going to go in like B tier or decent gun tier, because it's not fantastic, but if you can hit your shots, it is going to be very, very, very difficult for the enemies to do much about it, especially since it was buffed. So, is that all the weapons for the light? No, the XSR... Actually, don't remember what this is called. SR something. The sniper for the light is... I think it's pretty solid, you know. I don't know if it's good in all situations. It is a little... You know what? I'm going to put this into A. I think the sniper is a very, very solid weapon. Both for terminal attack and for world, well, maybe more for ranked actually. I think for ranked, for terminal attack, I'll leave it in here. Yeah, maybe even ahead of the XP54, honestly. For terminal attack, I'm gonna leave it in here. Just very, very good pick. It's not the hardest to use. It is hit scan. You got a nice scope on it. You just have to know how to aim it. And if you know how to aim it and you know how to position yourself and not stay in one place for too long and not stay looking down the sights for too long and all that kind of stuff, this is going to be a very solid weapon. And even at the closer ranges, if you can quick scope or just no scope, it's going to be very, very powerful as well. And neither of those things are super difficult to do. So for terminal attack, I would be putting this right here. And if you're not playing terminal attack, if you're playing World Tour, I think it's going to go more towards the decent gun tier instead. Because when you're playing against those mediums and heavies more often, I think that you're just going to have a little bit more of a rougher time. But I'm going to leave it an A. I think this is... Yeah, I'm going to leave it an A. I'm not going to balance all of these weapons due to terminal attack. I think I'm probably going to balance them, like, in general, like the average of how good they are. But I think because the sniper is either, like, A or B, depending on the game mode you're playing, I'm just going to leave it an A. I think it is very solid. Maybe I'll put it behind the XP54, actually, because the XP54 is very good in both modes, and the sniper is particularly good in one of the modes. So I think I'll put the XP54 ahead of it. Dagger, depends on playstyle. Probably Troll, I think. It's not trash, because if you can play with it, then... Yeah, well, you know what? Depends on playstyle, then. If you can play with this thing, and if you can do well with it, you can dish out some really large amount of damage very quickly. If you know how to, like, dash into someone when you're facing them, and then still backstab them, even though you're not actually behind them, or it doesn't look like you're behind them, this can dish out very, very, very large amounts of damage. So I'll probably put that in depends on playstyle. It's you know, most of the time if someone picks it, it's probably not going to go well, but occasionally you'll get like a god teammate that can do whatever they want with this thing. So I'll put it in depends on playstyle. I don't think it's going to be... Well, you know what? I'm going to say probably Troll, because of what I just said. It most likely is someone just trying out the weapon because it seems fun, and I don't think I should put it in depends on playstyle, because, I mean, the V9, I'd much rather have a teammate in 99% of situations that is using the V9S or the 93R than I would have someone using the dagger. So for that reason, I'm going to put this behind. And also, if you're playing terminal attack, probably not going to be able to do so much with dagger. So we'll leave that there. Then we are going to come to the sword, which is definitely solid. Good in all situations, no. It's a decent gun, though, so I'll pop it there. Yeah, sword's just very solid. Even in terminal attack, where it's much harder to use, you can have some success with it. But mainly you're probably going to be using this in World Tour. And it's just a very, very solid weapon. You know, pairing it with the evasive thatch is very good, or even the cloaking device can give you very large amounts of success. And since it was kind of buffed with, not the launch of Season 3, but slightly before, where you can, like, damage multiple opponents with it, it can be very, very, very good when there's kind of lots of people clumped up together. And often that is the case in World Tour. So I'm going to leave that as a decent gun because, well, decent weapon. Because I think it is decent. Ahead of the LH1, I mean, yeah, and ahead of the M11, yeah, because it is easier to use, I think. I think it's pretty, yeah. I'll put it ahead of the SH1900, actually. That's not because I think it's better, that's because I think it's easier to use, and it's... Yeah, I just think it's easy. No, I'm going to put the SH1900 ahead of it, because that's good in both World Tour and in Terminal Attack, but I think the sword is going to be particularly useful in World Tour. So it's going to go behind the SH1900, but ahead of the M11 and the LH1, because I think it's much easier to use than either of those weapons. I think you just, you know, you hold down the lunge attack, hit them with that, and then dash around the place a bit, then hit them with another lunge attack, and then they're probably going to die. Not the hardest to use, obviously no aiming, no visual recoil, no recoil pattern, no reload, nothing like that. You point and whack, and then the enemies die. So is that it for light then? Am I missing something for the light, or is that all? The bow, aha, and the throwing knives. The bow and the throwing knives, okay. Start with the throwing knives. Good in all situations, decent gun. Depends on playstyle. Depends on playstyle or decent gun. We need to have something in this tier, but I don't think it's going to be the throwing knife, because I think the throwing knives are pretty solid. So I'm going to put this, I'll put it at the end of this tier, decent gun. So the throwing knives are very solid. You don't have to reload, which is obviously nice. They're also pretty much silenced, so it can be super annoying to try and find out where a light is if they're throwing these things, especially if they're cloaked or dashing around the place. Can be very, very disorientating. Or disorienting, I don't know. Anyway, Yeah, so these are decent. They're very hard to use, though. Very, very hard to hit shots with. So that's why I'm putting it at the end of this, because most of the time, if you get a teammate that's using these, they're probably not going to be able to hit very many of the shots because it is hard to do. But if they can, then you're probably going to have a very good light on your team. So I'm going to put that as a decent gun because I think it is pretty solid. And then we're going to move on to the bow, which is the final weapon for the light. Is it good? Well, you know what? I might actually leave this in A, honestly. At the longer ranges, you can hold the bow down and then the arrow goes faster. And at the closer ranges, you don't have to hold it down. You just let it fly. And then it shoots them without you having to hold the bow down. So it's both got like a long range kind of shoot and a close range shoot. And I think for that reason, it is going to be good in all situations because you can make it work in all situations. Obviously, again, no recoil pattern, no visual recoil, and no reload. It is going to be, well, technically there is a reload, but it's not a proper reload. You don't have to press the reload button to reload. Automatic reload. But yeah, I think this is going to be easier to use than the throwing knives because the throwing knives come out a bit slower and the bow comes out much, much faster. And also you can kind of zoom in with the bow, which can be very useful as well. This is going to be very useful in terminal attack, I find, because if you hit someone with a fully charged shot and they're light, you can just melee them. So hit them with a fully charged shot, dash towards them, and then melee them, and then they die, and then that's a kill for you. Or if they're far away, and you get a headshot, then congratulations, they're dead. I think this actually does more damage than the bow. So it's definitely a solid weapon, but it is very, very, very hard to use. So I would say this does depend on your playstyle. Like, if you can't hit many of the shots, then you probably would just have an easier time with something else. Like, I actually use the sniper, because I can hit many more shots with the sniper than I can with the bow. So it definitely does depend on your playstyle, but if you can hit like most of your shots with this thing, it is quite well versed. It's like very not so. It's good in all of the situations, and it does just do loads and loads of damage. So it's good in both World Tour and in ranked, I find. So I'm actually going to leave that in good in all situations, but I am going to leave it at the end because XP54 and the sniper are both much easier to use. So yeah. And then that's it for light. So then I guess the logical thing to do would be to go on to the medium. Is there anything god tier for medium? I don't think so. I don't think there's any god tier weapons right now, honestly. I don't think we're going to be putting anything in that tier for this game. So we're going to probably start off with the AKM, which is just going to go first place there. AKM, just good in all situations. Very, very solid weapon. Decent damage, decent reload, decent mag size, all that good stuff. Just recoil pattern isn't so hard either. Very, 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 very solid weapon. Yeah, not much else to say about that. Then we're going to move on to the FCAR, and this is actually going to go into the lower tier. And where's this going to go? SH1900 sword, LH1, M11. It's going to go here, I'd say. It's decent, but the AKM is just much better in pretty much every single way. The FCAR does 0.01... Oh no. The FCAR kills someone 0.01 seconds faster, and that's the fastest it kills someone. So certain classes have, like, die 0.01 seconds faster to the FCAR than they die to the AKM. And that is not going to be the difference maker in your fights. You're not going to have a shootout with the AKM and the FCAR and the person's using the FCAR and oh no, they killed you 0.01 seconds faster than you killed them. That's just not going to happen. And also, it's only for some of the classes. So for some of the classes, the AKM does kill faster. I don't remember off the top of my head which ones it is. But the AKM also has a much easier recoil pattern, a bigger mag size, and less... I mean, yeah, much easier recoil pattern and bigger mag size, and it kills, like, the same as the FCAR. Or faster in some classes. So there's really not much point at all in using the FCAR over the AKM. Lower mag size, so you have to reload more often. It does have a faster reload speed, but you're going to be reloading much more often, much more frequently. And it's just, you know, lower mag size and less damage normally doesn't go so well in shooters. Like, why would you use the FCAR over the AKM? I know some people like their reload speed, but I like when I don't have to reload the gun. I just kill the person and then reload the gun, you know? So that's gonna go in B tier. The AKM is just better, I find, and I find it quite surprising that a lot of people are still using the FCAR, but I do think the AK, it does have a scope on it, so maybe people like that as well. But the recoil pattern is much more difficult than the AKM. But the AKM, I think, is just better. I think it's pretty significantly better, so that's why they're going to go in different tiers. FAMAS, yeah. FAMAS is weird. I suppose I could put it in B. Maybe just behind the FCAR. Maybe I could put it behind the M11. Yeah, I'll put it there. Yeah, I mean, FAMAS is in a pretty weird spot because we already have two guns that do the exact same thing. And this one's just a burst, which means it's a little bit harder to use. So yeah, it's just in a very, very, very weird spot. Like, we have three weapons that all do the same thing for medium. So it's just a little bit odd, like the way Light has the XP54, the M11, the V9S, and the 93R. They all do the exact same thing. But it is solid. It's like a solid weapon. It's not bad. It doesn't absolutely suck. And if you like it, and if you can hit your shots with it, and if you don't mind that it's a burst weapon, it's like a solid weapon. It's probably not going to be in here. It's probably just going to be where I put it a second ago. So yeah, there's not really much else to say about that. I don't really use this thing that much. I don't see many people using it that much. But it's solid. I know it can dish out good amounts of damage. I know the reload's okay. I know the recoil pattern is alright. I know it's like just an all-around pretty okay weapon. I do think the FCAR and the well, maybe, you know what? I'll put it a little bit behind the FCAR. No, actually, no. I'm gonna leave it where I did because it is burst. So the worst thing about it is that it's burst, and burst stuff is always going to be harder to control while you're shooting than like a full auto thing, because you just have to keep clicking the mouse button, and it's like one extra thing you have to do, and it's just going to be a little bit harder to multitask and keep your crosshair on target when you're like continuously pressing the mouse button. So I'm gonna put it where I'm gonna leave it where I put it originally. CL40, yeah. I mean, this thing isn't great. I'm gonna say this depends on playstyle. Because it does depend on your playstyle, you have to, you know, probably pair this with jump pad and try and get lots of splash damage from up high. Be nice if the enemies are grouped together. This used to be very solid, but now it just kind of sucks. It got like a fire rate buff, but a damage nerf. And the splash damage isn't really that. You have to be like quite close to the player for the splash damage to kick in. And sometimes it's going to be hard to hit those longer shots. You've only got 4 bullets in the mag. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage. And if you want to do the most damage, you have to hit a direct shot. So there's a lot of things kind of going against it and not so much going for it. This can be good for lobbing stuff into buildings and all that, but you're probably just going to have a pretty rough time using this, especially after the nerf. Yeah, if this wants to be buffed, which I think it probably should be, nice to see a little mag size or something like that. Even 4 to 5, I think, would make a big difference. Or like, instead of loading it individually, putting the pellets in and putting the bullets individually in, just like having an actual mag, I think would help a lot for this weapon, like a proper mag reload. So you reload all 4 at once. I think that would be nice as well. But right now, that's not in a very solid spot. Is that it for no? We've got the... Yeah, Model 1887 is very good, actually. It's not good in all situations, but I think I'm probably going to put it in that tier. So this is going to go probably behind the AKM. I could put it ahead of it, honestly. But Model 1887 has been very, very solid for a long time. Obviously, the downsides to it are the reload speed. And it's got like a... Well, yeah, just the reload speed, actually. But if you can hit your shots with it, this thing is going to do a bunch of damage, even at the longer ranges. I had to sneeze. I'm glad you heard that. So even at the longer ranges, this is going to be a pretty solid weapon. It's still going to dish out a good bit of damage. So that's why I'm not putting it in like a decent gun tier, because it is good in all situations, even though it's a shotgun. But yeah, it's just pretty solid, not that hard to use. You point at the enemy, you shoot at them. Again, no visual recoil, no recoil pattern, just very, very easy weapon to use. You do have to be quite precise. You do have to make sure your reticle is really in the center of the enemy, otherwise you're not going to be doing so much damage, and it is going to be good in both ranked and in world tours, so I think I am just going to leave it here because it is like an all-round very, very solid pick for pretty much anything. So, then we're going to come to the revolver, and this is a decent gun. I'm going to put it behind the sword. Gonna put it behind the sword, because it's kind of where it is with the LH1 and the M11, where it's only good in like kind of certain situations where you have to be quite good with it to make it worthwhile, but it is solid. So the iron sights on it still kind of suck after all this time, but if you can get over that and if you can hit your shots with it, then it is going to dish out very, very large amounts of damage very, very quickly. So if you can consistently hit shots with this thing, it's going to be very, very good. But because of the iron sights and just, yeah, well, mainly because of the iron sights, I think, it's going to be pretty hard to consistently hit shots with this thing. And also positioning is kind of going to be important with this, because it's not like the AKM, where you can just stand out in the open and dump a whole mag into someone. You probably need to, like, shoot, get to cover, shoot, get to cover, shoot, get to cover, and all that kind of stuff as well. So it's going to be a little bit hard to use without dying as well. But it is solid. If you can hit your shots, you're going to take people out real quick. You just have to be able to hit the shots, and that's going to be like a very, very tricky thing to do. I find that this is actually one of the most difficult weapons to hit shots with, even more so than the bow or the sniper for some reason. It might generally be just because of the iron sights, I'm not sure. But it definitely feels like it's very hard to hit shots with. I haven't used it in a while though, so maybe that's changed now. But it's definitely not going to be good in all situations, because at those closer ranges, you're all going to struggle with either like the quick scoping or the hip fire a little bit more. And even at the longer ranges, you know, using the sniper is going to give you like a much easier time of hitting shots than with the revolver. So it's solid, and it's like not bad, not that far from, you know, the very left of the tier. But it's like, it is good in all situations, but I think it's just pretty hard to use. So I'm going to put it in here. Like, I'm kind of paying attention to what these actually say, but I'm still pretty much just treating it like S, A, B, C, D, and then E. But I feel like that's kind of already, I think you probably already know that. Then the Riot Shield, and this is going to be the last thing for the medium. So the Riot Shield, yeah, it's not decent. Does it depend on your playstyle? Or, I mean, does it depend on your playstyle, or is it probably troll? I wonder. Yeah, I mean, I'll put it here, because if you put it in probably troll, then I have to put this in probably troll as well. So I'll put it in depends on playstyle. Just to reiterate quickly on the V9S and the 9-3R, those are in probably troll and not depends on playstyle, because like the XP54 or the M11 or the sword is going to be better than the V9S, the 9-3R, or the dagger. Like there's counterparts that are just much better for most people. But again, if you're really, 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 really good with the dagger, then this could even go here, right? But I'm not putting it there because you're probably not. So just to quickly reiterate on that, they're not in this tier because there's stuff that do it much, much better. So like, it's not going to depend on your playstyle. Like if you're using the V9S, it probably is just because you're really familiar with the XP54 and you wanted to give it a go. And I'd say that's the same with the 9-3R. I don't think these are going to depend on your playstyle. I think these are just worse versions of other weapons, pretty much. So just to quickly say that again, I'm not too sure if I said it at the start or not. So, Riot Shield depends on playstyle, because it can be okay. I mean, in World Tour, you're probably going to see this more than you would in Ranked. And it can be alright. You know, you can block damage. Your weakness is going to be the Pyro Grenade. I think that still insta-kills you. I'm not too sure if that's been changed or not. Someone let me know in the comments if it has. But it's alright. You know, if you're chasing down a light, you're probably not going to be able to do a whole lot unless you have the zipline, because light is just faster than you, right? But if you're chasing down a heavy, then maybe you'll be okay. You kind of have to hope that they're not using the flamethrower or a sledgehammer, because you'll just get outgunned. But yeah, I mean, it's alright. A lot of things have to go right for you to make this thing worthwhile, and you are going to have to know how to use it and how to kind of counter the things that are scary, like the sledgehammer or the flamethrower or the pyro grenade. So that's why I'm putting it on depends on its playstyle, because it can be alright. It has the potential to be okay in like a player with good hands, but you really have to know what you're doing. So I am going to put it in depends on playstyle. But for like 99% of people, just using and literally anything else is going to give you a much, much easier time. And then similarly, the dual blades, dual katanas, I don't actually know what they're called, but the dual swords are going to go just behind it, because I think they are literally just slightly worse than it. yeah, I mean, these things don't really have a whole lot going for them. Yes, you can deflect bullets, but that's, you have to be like really, you have to aim at the person perfectly to deflect when they're going to deflect. Also, I'm pretty sure someone can just shoot you in the feet, like with the riot shield. And if you're not looking at them directly head on, if you're like a little bit to the side, you're not going to block the bullet. So you really, really are going to have to know what you're doing with this thing. You're really going to have consistent aim while you're blocking. And you're going to have to know how to chase down opponents as well. Both of these are going to be seen much more useful in World Tour than in Ranked, I would say. So, yeah, that concludes the medium. And now we're going to go on to the heavy. Right. Am I going to put the spear in trash? I think I might, you know. I think I might put the spear in trash. I think that might be the only thing that's going to go. You know, this one might be more controversial, but I'm gonna put the spear in trash because the sledgehammer does the exact same thing, but it's just better. Like, it really is just better. Can one-shot lights, can do a bunch of damage to medium, can do a bunch of damage to heavy. It can do very large swings, so you kind of have an AoE already with the primary attack, and the spear has the, like, circle attack with the secondary attack, but it's really, really slow and you don't actually get many hits for it. So I think just sweeping with the primary attack with the sledgehammer is going to do a lot more damage much faster than the secondary attack of the spear. And the primary attack of the spear is okay, it comes out quick, but like I think the sledgehammer is just better. I mean, yeah, it's decent. It's definitely solid. I'll put it... Yeah, I'll put it ahead of the throwing knives for sure. Maybe ahead of the FAMAS. I'll put it there. You do have to know what you're doing. You have to like pair it well with, you know, if you pair it with charge and slam, you have to know how to like when to charge to catch up to the enemies and then when to attack. Pairing with goo gun, you have to know when to like how to hit enemies with the goo, freeze them, and then attacking them with the sledgehammer. If you're pairing it with the winch claw, you have to know how to like stop a light from dashing away if you claw them. If you're pairing it with, well, yeah, you have to know how to like pair it with the right specialization, how to make it work, and all that kind of stuff. But if you know how to use it and you know how to like not take too much damage when you're trying to take someone out, and you know how to like play angles and all that stuff, this is probably going to be a pretty solid weapon. And it definitely doesn't suck. I mean, obviously it depends on your playstyle. Technically all of the weapons depend on your playstyle, but it's going to be much, much easier to use than the CL40 Riot Shield or the Dual Katana, so it's going to stay where it is. And again, compared to the spear, it's like the spear just really doesn't have a place in the game right now, I think. Like, if Sledgehammer versus Spear, pretty sure Sledgehammer's just going to win that fight. And if Spearman tries to run away, you just winch claw him, and then Sledgehammer's going to, like... I really don't feel like there's a whole lot of point using the spear at all when you have the sledgehammer. Like, at least with the V9S and the 93R, like, you can use them, and they'll do alright. It's just that the XB54 and the M11 and the LH1 are probably just going to do it better for most players. But, like, you can use these. But the spear, I mean, you can use if you really want to, but I feel like it's just completely and entirely and utterly overshadowed by the sledgehammer. I really don't feel like there's not much point in using it at all. Yeah, I think someone commented this in one of my videos a while ago, but I feel like it was a really missed opportunity to make this like Orissa's javelin throw. I used to play like a good bit of Overwatch, and if this were like Orissa's javelin throw and you had like, instead of the secondary weird slow spin attack that this has, it'd be really cool if you just threw it, and then you've got like a ranged attack as well. That would be like a great, like a melee weapon that's also ranged, or if you could like recall it or something, that would be really cool. But like the secondary attack is just really not that useful at all. It's like less useful than the throwing knife secondary attack, because like that's saying something. Yeah, it's just not, it's really not gonna cut it. The sledgehammer is just gonna be better in like 99% of situations, I think. Unless you're finishing off someone that's low, the sledgehammer is gonna be better, because if you're finishing off someone that's low, then, you know, you can just quick attack with the spear, but even then you can just melee if you're using the sledgehammer. So I don't know, enough about that though. That's just my opinion. If you don't agree with that, you can comment it down below, that's fine. But I really just don't feel like the spear is gonna be fantastic. The sledgehammer isn't that good anyway. You're gonna really struggle to use this in ranked, for example, but it is solid in World Tour for sure. So then, flamethrower. Yeah, if you're playing World Tour, this is going to be God tier. And it's not because it's super overpowered, it's just because it's like by far the easiest weapon in the entire game to use. There's no visual recoil, there's no recoil pattern, there's a very, very nice mag size, the reload is still fast even though there's like an extremely large mag size. It does decent damage and it can hit multiple enemies at once. Yes, it's only close range, but it's like got enough range on it that you don't really have to worry about it. It's got like more range on it than the Lights SH1900. And you're using this on the class that has the most health. So if you're like domed and you're standing inside that dome and you're shooting at someone else's dome, it also shoots through shields, basically, is what I'm trying to say. It's just a very, very easy weapon that's also very good. So if you're playing World Tour, this is probably going to be God tier. It's just a very, 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 very easy weapon to use. You're probably not going to miss very many shots with it. So even if the Lewis gun or something does do more damage, you're probably going to have like a 99% hit rate with this gun. Whereas with the Lewis gun, it's probably more along the lines of like 50% or something at least. So it's just super, 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 super simple to use. And also it's like solid. It's a solid weapon. So that's why it's going to go in God tier for me. Especially after the Lewis gun and the M60 nerfs. It's just really, really easy to use. But I'm not going to leave it in God tier. If you're playing World Tour, this is going to be God tier, I think. It's not because it's super overpowered, but just because of how easy it is to use and how solid it is. But if you're playing ranked, then it's probably going to be... Ooh, if you're playing ranked, it's probably going to be like here. So for that reason, I'm going to average it out. And I'm going to leave it in B tier. Like, normally it would be good in all situations, but it's not going to be very useful or very effective in ranked. So I'll put it like first in decent gun tier. But again, if you're playing World Tour, probably God tier. If you're playing ranked, probably like down here. So I'm just going to average it out, and I'm going to leave it in like first in decent gun, because it is a very, very decent gun. And technically it's not good in all situations, because it doesn't have any range on it. But I'm going to leave it first in B tier for sure, at least. Then we're going to come to the KS-23. Yeah, this is going to depend on your playstyle. The problem with this is that it's got a lot of spread on it at the longer ranges. So even if, like, this weapon is probably the most similar to the bow, but the bow doesn't have any bloom on it. And this has a bunch of bloom on it. So it doesn't feel very good to use. If you can hit shots with it at like medium to close range, you'll probably have an alright time in World Tour. Like if you're very, very good at using this weapon and you're very, very good at hitting shots, this could go maybe even into A for ranked rather. And maybe even in World Tour, honestly. It's probably going to be more effective in ranked though. But I feel like it's just really, really, really hard to use and really, really, really hard to hit shots. And also, you're going to be playing against mostly lights in ranked, where this is going to be more useful. And they're going to be invisible, so either you're not going to see them, or they're going to be using dash, so you're going to have to hit them real quick with a projectile weapon to be able to hit that shot. So I think this is going to be pretty hard to use, so it definitely is going to depend on your playstyle. But if you can aim it, then this is going to be pretty good in World Tour, and it's going to be okay. I mean, pretty good in ranked and okay in World Tour. But I'm gonna leave it there because max size isn't great. Like, yes, it has some destructive capabilities, but max size isn't fantastic. Reload is slow, and also it's really hard to hit shots at medium to longer ranges. So I'm gonna leave it there. SA-1216. Yeah, I mean it's a decent gun for sure. I'll put it like behind the LH1 and the M11, I feel like that's a solid place to put it. Yeah, definitely solid. If you're playing World Tour, Flamethrower, just going to be better, I would say. And if you're playing Ranked, then this actually is probably going to be better for Ranked. So yeah, the problem with it is that it doesn't have a whole lot of range, and the fire rate is pretty slow. So if there's a light using like SH1900, they're just going to take you out in 2 shots with that. And if there's a light using a sniper, you're not going to be able to do anything against them with this because it's a shotgun. So it would be in a pretty weird place for ranked. Like if someone's close to you then yeah, you'll probably be able to dish out some decent damage with it if you can hit your shots. But if someone's far away, you're not going to be able to do a whole lot. So yeah, I don't really know how this would perform in ranked. The image I get of it in ranked is just like weird. I would say this would be weird in ranked. But in World Tour, it's definitely just an all-round solid weapon. If you can hit your shots with it, it's like very, very solid. Can still take out enemies very, very quickly. I know you can actually pair this with Winch Claw, and when you pair it with Winch Claw, if you're looking straight at them, you can get like 1 or 2 completely direct hits with it, and that does a bunch of damage, and then you just have to finish them off with the other 2, and you can heal people really, really, really quick with that. Obviously, it has like the chuk pump thing after every 4 shots, so you do gotta be aware of that. But for World Tour, this is going to be very, very solid, and you can probably make it work in ranked as well, actually, so it's just a pretty solid, decent weapon all around. Then, the Lewis gun. Yeah, the Lewis gun. Gonna put this behind the LH1 and the M11. Putting it behind the MH1 and the M11 and the FCAR and all those because it's just harder to use. You know, the recoil pattern isn't very fun, visual recoil isn't very fun, and the damage isn't very fun either. It just, you know, it's an okay weapon, but it just feels like it's really bad to use. That's how I would describe it. It doesn't feel like it's very fun to use, doesn't feel good to use. The gunplay doesn't feel smooth, it feels super clunky with it. So while it is good, it just really feels like it sucks to use. In World Tour, going to be solid, and in Ranked, also going to be solid, so I'm probably just going to leave it as a decent gun. If you can hit your shots with it, then, you know, that's going to be good. If you can't, you should probably just use something else. But yeah, it definitely feels very, very bad to use, and I'm going to put the M60 directly behind it. I think the Lewis gun and the M60 are quite close together, just because the M60 has a lot of mag size, and it doesn't do that much less damage. So definitely like quite close to the Lewis gun, I would say, but I think it is worse, and I think they both feel really, really awful to use. So they're both solid, but they both really feel like they suck to use, I would say. But yeah, they definitely are both pretty solid weapons. And then we only have the MGL-32. Where am I going to put you? I've been saving this one because if you're playing World Tour, and if you know how to use this weapon, I think this is going to be very, very good. Probably A tier. I think this is going to be very, very good in ranked. If you know how to hit your shots, and you know how to track the lights, and all that kind of stuff, you know when to reload, I think this is going to dish out lots of damage and get you a lot of kills pretty quickly. Especially if you're kind of a lower rank where there's... Yeah, especially if you're in a lower rank. And in World Tour, this is also going to be pretty solid. So, yeah, I mean... If there is a light with using an SH-1900 or a sniper, they're both probably going to be able to take you out before you can even hit them. So that's the downside of it. But if you know how to, like, stay at cover and then lob these through windows and you know where the enemies are because of one of your teammates' sonar grenades or something, this is going to be very, very solid. I do actually think this is pretty good in most situations if you know what you're doing with it, especially if you're pairing, like, charge and slam for when they come close, or for, like... I don't know, if you're pairing it with the goo gun, if they come close, it's definitely going to be a pretty solid weapon. So I think I might actually leave that an A, honestly, but I'm surprising myself with that one. But it's a very decent weapon, just not a lot of people use it because it's very hard to use effectively, I would say. And it's pretty clunky, and you can take a lot of damage yourself if you're just standing out in the open and trying to shoot people like you would with a Lewis gun. But that's not how you're going to want to use this weapon. But I think it is a pretty solid... Maybe I'll put it... Well, I don't think I need to put it in the... I've put the bow in A, and the bow is hard to use, and the sniper. So this is like a very... This is going to be the hardest weapon to use that's going to go in A. But I think it's going to be, like, very solid if you can use it. Well, maybe... No, because I don't think it's better than the flamethrower. No, I don't think it's... Because it is... No, never mind. I take that back. I'm going to put it in B, and it's going to go ahead of the Lewis gun. Because that's how bad the Lewis gun and the M60 feel to use. I think this is very solid, but I remembered that the flamethrower is not... It's not better than the flamethrower. Put it behind the SH-1900. How about that? Because the AKM is better than the FCAR. I'll put it behind the SH-1900 because the SH-1900 is very, very good, but very hard to use. And I think it's going to be similar for that weapon. And then it's also behind the flamethrower, and that makes me feel happier. So it's like a very, very solid weapon. It's not good in all situations because it is very hard to use. And if someone's very close to you and you don't have charge and slam or anything, it'll be really hard to take that person out, especially if they're like a light using SH1900. You're probably just going to die. But it is a very solid weapon. So there you go. I think that's going to be the whole tier list there. And again, there's some things that go in God tier if you're playing certain game modes, like the sniper, probably in God tier if you're playing ranked. The flamethrower, probably God tier if you're playing World Tour. And then the spear, yeah, the spear is gonna go to trash just because like the sledgehammer is just so much better. Yeah, maybe I haven't used the spear enough. That genuinely could be a thing, but from how much I have used it, I used it a couple times and I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm gonna use sledgehammer now. Like, I don't know, maybe that's just my thought on it, maybe it's okay. But the spear is the only thing I feel like I don't, I'm not 100% sure about. I'd just be like 80% sure about that one. But everything else I'd be pretty confident about that this is where they would be regarding certain metas and stuff. Obviously some of this is going to change with whatever specializations or gadgets you pair it with and all that. But yeah, the spear I think is pretty weak. I mean, I could remove the trash tier and put it here. But I don't want to say that it's as bad as the VNS and the 9-3R and the dagger. I mean, you know what? The 9-3R and the VNS and the dagger are all kind of worse versions of other stuff. Like 9-3R is a worse version of the XP54, the M11. VNS is a worse version of the LH1, and the dagger is a worse version of the sword. For most players, again, if you're really, really good, dagger can probably go into God tier. So you know what? I'll leave the spear and probably troll. And I'll get rid of this row. Yeah. Now the spear is also just like a worse version of the sledgehammer, and I think I'm going to feel happier about that. I am going to leave the God tier there though, because again, there is stuff that goes into God tier depending on the game mode. But yeah, I think that's pretty much going to be it for the tier list video. So if you disagree with anything, then feel free to let me know down in the comments down below. This is like pretty much just my opinion. I mean, I feel like this would reflect the current meta pretty accurately. But if anyone disagrees with anything, then you know, feel free to share your opinions in the comments. So anyway, there you go. Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. That is going to be it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Farewell.